This anime is straight up insane. Humanity is on the brink of extinction, but to stop it, chosen humans have to go toe-to-toe with the gods in a deathmatch for everyone's survival. Ragnarok is heating up, and the score is a wild 3-3 tie, which means the next round decides who takes the lead in this war. While things are getting heated, Buddha went to the infirmary and already suspects Brunhilde is hiding some dirty little secret. He then recruited a Japanese hero to look into some guy named Siegfried who could flip the whole tournament on its head. But while that mystery unfolds behind the scenes, we meet the seer Nostradamus, the only human to ever break a divine taboo. He's so cocky he tried to trash the Bifrost, the bridge between realms, and ended up being banished to Helheim as punishment. Brunhilde says it's not his time to fight yet, so the spotlight shifts back to the champ of the 7th round. To understand how high the stakes are, the universe is split between Valhalla's heaven, Midgard's human world, and the dark underworld of Helheim. The Bifrost is the only path between these worlds, and only powerhouse gods like Zeus and Hades can cross that gate. But forget the rules, because humanity brought out its greatest historical authority, the king of where it all began, Qin Shi Huang. All the emperors of China gathered to pave the way for the man who unified the nations and took down 6 kings single-handedly. He steps into the arena by walking over everyone, using the Valkyrie transformed into divine armor guards. This guy's story starts back in 260 BC, in a setting of pure hatred and bloody warfare. He was born as a hostage, abandoned in the middle of a war where a general buried nearly 500,000 people alive. Imagine the sheer hate those people had for the kingdom of Qin. And the kid, who did nothing wrong, was the one who bore the brunt of it. He was a boy who suffered all kinds of psychological abuse and constant threats, growing up in total isolation because of his bloodline. Even so, he kept a forced smile on his face and apologized just for existing, trying to ease the resentment of those attacking him. It was his defense mechanism to survive that emotional hell, hoping that one day people would finally forgive his origin. He carried the weight of an entire nation on his shoulders without ever knowing what it was like to be truly loved. Everything changed when Chunyan showed up, a woman hired to be his new nanny and personal bodyguard. At first, she hated him too, but she quickly realized the boy's life was pure torture, and that he only smiled so he wouldn't cry. She discovered the kid had mirror-touch synesthesia, a neurological condition that made him physically feel the pain of anyone he saw getting hurt. If someone was cut near him, wounds would appear on Qin Shi Huang's own body in real time, out of pure empathy. Imagine being surrounded by hate and still feeling the pain of every person who hits or threatens you. Chun Yan was the first person to hug that boy and tell him he had permission to cry and be vulnerable. That hug opened his heart, and from then on, she became the mother he never had. She then gave him a blindfold so he'd stop seeing others suffering and his body would stop being affected. It was 2 years of pure happiness, with training and laughter, until fate finally brought news that the boy was the heir to the throne. On the trip back to Qin, Chao's warriors attacked to kill the prince, now that the protection orders had finally expired. Chunyan fought with everything she had to protect her soul son. She defeated everyone but ended up mortally wounded, dying right in front of him while he held her in his arms. In her final moments, she told him he was innocent and asked him to become the greatest king of all. He took that promise to heart and ascended the throne at age 12, focused on becoming the greatest king in Chinese history. At 28, he stood up to the demon god Qi Yu, a monster that demanded sacrifices to validate China's royal titles. But instead of offerings, Qin gave him such an epic beatdown that lasted 6 whole days until the demon dropped dead. He defeated this demon god without even having a Valkyrie at the time, proclaiming himself the first emperor of China and creating the Qi Yu fighting style. With vision trained to see the flow of qi, he learned to destabilize any opponent with powerful air bullets and also mastered the force of the phoenix, a technique that reflects the enemy's power back at them. But his opponent now is none other than Hades, the king of the underworld. The god who makes the earth tremble with every step in the arena came for revenge for his brother Poseidon and fused his trident with his own weapon to fight with divine fury. All the gods trust him because Hades is known simply as the most reliable and protective pillar of the Greek pantheon. A long time ago, in the Gigantomachy, he proved his worth when the Titans escaped Tartarus to topple the gods of Olympus. While Zeus and the others focused on the giants, Hades simply marched alone to the entrance of Hell to hold back the Titan invasion. He faced an entire army of monsters without asking for help, fulfilling his duty to protect his younger brothers. Hades is the ultimate example of a big brother, facing an army of Titans solo to protect his siblings. When Poseidon found out about his sacrifice, Hades swore he'd never be defeated again and kept that promise for eons. In the present, we find out he even saved the brother Poseidon was supposed to have killed, turning the guy into a cyborg called Adamus. And the one who did the dirty work was Beelzebub, a sinister scientist who spends his time creating monsters so they'll try to kill him. We're back in the arena, and the fight starts. Hades immediately slashes Qin's abdomen, but the Chinese emperor doesn't flinch. He uses Qi to reflect the attack and sends the god straight into the wall with a heavy counter. Things heat up, and when Hades asks what being a king means to him, Qin lays down the truth about never hesitating or relying on anyone. The king of the underworld just starts laughing because it reminded him so much of his brother, and right then, their mutual respect hits max level. Hades then resorts to a brutal strike that Qin barely survives. He takes off his blindfold, showing that the game has officially gotten serious. But the King of Hell is insane and stabs his own chest to coat his spear in blood, awakening his most powerful technique. And that's where things got ugly. The Chinese emperor had his shoulder pierced and ended up losing an entire arm in the carnage. But the proud king of where it all began, the great emperor of China, doesn't surrender and reaches out to his Valkyrie for a final wind, and the divine weapon turns into a sword. He faces Hades with a smile, ready for all or nothing in that arena. All of humanity is crying and screaming for their sovereign, while the tension reaches an unbearable level. The two clash for the final time, and their weapons collide with an impact that makes everything shake. The Chinese emperor was at a total disadvantage with one arm missing, but he noticed the flow of qi in the blood-soaked spear. He fires a precise air bullet at the tip of the god's weapon, destabilizing the attack and opening a perfect gap. With the force of the phoenix, he cuts through Hades and slashes the god's chest from top to bottom. Hades falls as his body begins to turn to dust, apologizing to his brothers for breaking his oath never to lose. Qin Shi Huang, though totally broken, calls his rival friend, in a gesture of pure respect before losing consciousness and collapsing on the floor, but victorious. He was rushed to the infirmary to be placed in those healing pods. Meanwhile, the gods were fuming, and Adamus wanted to storm the infirmary to kill him. But Beelzebub showed up to hold him back and announced that he himself would fight in the 8th round to avenge Hades. We find out Beelzebub is the loneliest being in Valhalla, known as the Prince of Demons. The guy always lived in isolation because everyone believed he carried a curse from Satan himself. They said if you got close to him, your heart would be ripped out by this legendary creature that no one had even seen. Until 3 jokester angels, Azazel, Samael, and Lucifer himself, decided to ignore the rumors and became his friends. They spent their time stealing apples from Eden, running from guards, and finally making Beelzebub feel what friendship is like. But the dream turned into a nightmare when he woke up and saw his 3 friends dead with holes in their chests in the middle of the room. Right then and there, he swore revenge against Satan and started studying absolutely everything about demons to hunt down the culprit. In the middle of this search, he met Lilith, a dragon-winged demon who also wanted to avenge Lucifer. They investigated for eons, but nothing of Satan appeared, while Beelzebub had bizarre nightmares every night. He saw a giant red creature crushing his friends and would wake up screaming in pure terror. Lilith was always there to comfort him, and what started as a partnership turned into a deep love. But the truth is much crueler. Beelzebub is a victim of a demonic impulse called destrudo. This thing makes his body unconsciously destroy anyone he starts to truly love. The reality check was brutal because Beelzebub had no idea what was happening. And when that bizarre trance state takes over, he becomes a killing machine with no control over himself. The awakening was a nightmare. He opened his eyes and saw his own arm through the chest of his beloved Lilith. Right then, he understood that he was the one responsible for the death of all his friends the entire time. The tragedy of realizing he destroyed everything he loved left the Prince of Demons in pieces. Without knowing what he was doing, he became the very executioner of the people he most wanted to protect in this world. Beelzebub realized that Lilith's mark wasn't just a memory, but a safety lock that prevented him from taking his own life. He was shattered and desperate, so his solution was to knock on Hades' door, hoping the king of the underworld would finish the job right then and there. He took such a beating that he was happy, thinking he was finally going to die. But Hades explained that the mark was a prayer for him to live and embrace his misery with everything he had. Hades got nostalgic seeing how problematic Beelzebub was, just like his brothers. As a gift, he gave him the Staff of Apomaeus, which amplifies the demon's vibrations, making him almost impossible to kill. On the other side of the arena, humanity brought out none other than Nikola Tesla, the wizard of science. But the reality is that he hates anyone who calls what he does magic. Things got tense because nobody really likes Beelzebub, whereas Tesla was received like a rock star by the crowd. He arrived glowing with his Valkyrie, who turned into high-tech armor, the Super Automata Beta. In the stands, we even see Einstein. Everyone was there buzzing over the technology. Tesla started the fight analyzing Beelzebub without throwing a single punch, saying that curiosity feeds evolution. But Beelzebub wasn't in the mood for talk, and immediately started cracking the arena floor with high-frequency vibrations. He wants to end the scientist right off the bat, no mercy. So he turns his right hand into an invisible blade that pierces even divine armor, while his left creates a defensive wall of sound. Tesla was getting crushed, but he didn't stop calculating the enemy's moves. That's when he activated the Gematria Zone, an electric prison that defies physics itself. Inside that cube, he unlocked anti-gravity to fly and attack at extreme speeds. Beelzebub ended up spitting blood after being hit by a speed so insane, no one could even see it. To understand the genius of this man, we see a young Tesla running away from home to see his brother Dane, the most reliable teen in the village. His brother was trying to build a more powerful windmill but was frustrated by failing in his plans. Little Tesla would say that making mistakes is part of it, and failure drives the human race. Sadly, his brother died from a lightning strike before he could even finish the work. Tesla didn't give up. He spent 6 years locked away and finished his brother's work as a tribute. He lived for science until his last breath. His research led to the Philadelphia experiment, creating a portal of pure teleportation, kind of by accident. And thanks to time, he managed to refine it, and in the arena, he showed everyone how it's done. He teleported and appeared behind Beelzebub, landing an extremely powerful blow. But Beelzebub, with incredible combat skills, immediately figured out how the rules of that thing worked. It needed a charge and had limited points. He spends a coil of the suit to pull it off. If the 3 coils run out, the Valkyrie dies, and Tesla goes with her. But the scientist laughed, because sharing knowledge is what makes us evolve, and he's not at all afraid to show his cards. Beelzebub felt pain comparable to his fight against Hades and activated Form Zero. This forbidden technique created a massive explosion called Chaos, which mixes total attack and defense. It's a suicidal move that shows just how much he wants to win this fight. Dropping in real quick to say that, like Tesla, I'm not gonna hide anything from you either. If you don't like and subscribe right now, this mad scientist's next experiment is gonna be on your electricity bill, okay? So show some support, alright? Let's keep going. The chaos explosion was so absurd it almost wiped everything off the map, including Beelzebub himself. Tesla survived, but he had to sacrifice one of his coils to not turn into dust, ending up all beat up in the process. The demon didn't expect that, and thought the fight would end there. But the genius of science drops some truth. For humanity, the end simply doesn't exist. With his own brother's support from the stands, Tesla reactivated his prison of the gods to keep the show going. But now the scene was full of debris, limiting his movements, while Beelzebub had already memorized the rhythm of the combat. This power escalation was keeping everyone on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what next level this battle would take. It became a war of pure endurance, where whoever blinked first would be taken out without mercy. Beelzebub was losing blood with every vibration he used because his own attacks were making the existing wounds worse. Tesla was also on his last legs, but he unleashed a hail of blows to force the god to defend, even if it hurt both of them even more. The scene was intense. Two exhausted guys, bleeding, but with an unshakable determination to win at any cost. But the energy of Tesla's suit was running out faster than he wanted, making the scientist a bit slower. The moment was critical, and any mistake would be fatal for whoever dared to slip up in this deadly struggle for survival. Seeing that time was running out, Tesla decided to play his last card with a move no one could predict. He lunged for a plasma strike and sacrificed the last coil to do something truly insane. He teleported only his right arm. His arm appeared out of nowhere behind Beelzebub while the other came from the front, leaving the god with no way out. At least that's what Tesla thought. But the Prince of Demons is no ordinary guy. He manages to dodge that impossible blow at the very last millisecond. Beelzebub used his staff to block the teleported arm and counterattacked by piercing Tesla's heart with his blade. It was an epic end for history's greatest inventor, who fought until his last heartbeat to defend the future of the human race. Tesla said goodbye with massive honor, asking humanity to never stop seeking progress before disappearing with his Valkyrie. Even the gods were in shock and started to respect Beelzebub, leaving behind all that silly fear of his curse. With the score tied at 4-4, Zeus ran to call the next fighter, the Greek sun god, Apollo. But this god is the peak of egocentrism. He was relaxing with several women as if a war wasn't even happening. Ares already made it clear he hates him for being so narcissistic, but we can see he's actually just super jealous of Apollo. The god then entered the arena glowing more than anything, showing he's extravagant to the max. Apollo is known as the god of boxing, archery, and philosophy. Always focused on that idea of know thyself. His story shows he wasn't born perfect, but conquered everything with plenty of sweat and effort. During his life, he had a problem with the monstrous python that everyone was afraid of. But instead of killing the monster, he taught it to be its best version. After days and days of fighting, the monster finally understood what the god was trying to get across. And it became his #1 fan, even putting up a monument to the guy in Valhalla as a sign of respect. While the gods were celebrating, Brunhilde was already prepping a counterattack to put the immortals in their place. For the humans' side, she brought history's biggest rebel, Leonidas, the king of Sparta. The guy is a giant beast, muscles on top of muscles, and he was there chilling with his cigar. He hates gods in general, but he has a special grudge against Apollo because of some stupid rules that held the Spartans back in the past. Back in Sparta, a ritual for Apollo forbade the soldiers from fighting the Persians, but Leonidas threw the rules out the window. He just destroyed the god's statue and led 300 Spartans against 300,000 Persians on an unforgettable suicide mission. His fighting spirit is so absurd he didn't even want to fight now, but he changed his mind just so he could square up with Apollo. Leonidas didn't even wait for the fight to properly start and already charged at Apollo with pure hatred in his eyes. He uses his Valkyrie transformed into a shield to attack Apollo in every way possible, but the god manages to dodge every blow Leonidas throws at him. The king of Sparta tried fighting in other ways, with different weapons, but the god kept dodging. The Spartans in the crowd were getting pissed because the god wouldn't fight head-on, saying if he fought fair he wouldn't stand a chance. And that got into Apollo's head, and he decided to hurt his own ego to put on a show. He marked 2 lines on his sides and the king of Sparta's, forming a corridor to show they'd fight head-on, face-to-face, to prove he'd win even at a total disadvantage. During the exchange of blows, Leonidas ended up taking a punch to the face, which only served to make the king even more furious and dangerous. Leonidas's Spartan spirit was challenged, and he didn't take it lying down. He simply took the close range and bashed Apollo's face in with a headbutt. The threads the god had conjured vanished, and he took such a devastating hit that it literally sent him flying to the other side of the arena. Apollo dropped to his knees with a nasty cut on his face, but he was still smiling. He said fighting was beautiful and ended up winning King Leonidas's respect. That's when the god decided to stop playing around and take the fight with everything he had. He transformed his threads into the statue of Artemis and created a bow. And from there, he started firing glowing arrows at the speed of light. The king of Sparta tried to face the arrows head-on and was completely riddled. His chest turned into a sieve, and it even punctured the stand's wall. Those arrows were capable of defeating and piercing any divine armor. But Leonidas didn't back down an inch, and on Apollo's next shot, out of pure instinct, he moved and sent the arrow back into the god's chest, destroying his arm. Now both were bleeding heavily and almost ready to kick the bucket in the arena. They decided the next attack would decide who walked out alive or dead. Leonidas's Valkyrie turned into a giant red shield for the final defense. Apollo used the bow to launch himself like the arrow itself. Who would win? The supreme arrow of the gods or the impenetrable shield of humanity? And that's when we get a brutal clash between the two. Everyone's attention was at a level where no one could even look away. The impact was so violent that the Spartan shield was blown to pieces. The king of Sparta still managed to land a punch on the sun god's face, but the sun god's arm pierced Leonidas' abdomen without any mercy. The king then died right there, being embraced by the god he hated so much. It was a bitter defeat, giving the point for the 9th round to the gods. Humanity was in shock watching its greatest rebel turn into cosmic dust. Brunhilde was a nervous wreck because Leonidas was her trump card. And now humanity was at a disadvantage again in this battle against the gods, and once again, a step closer to extinction. With few options left on the list, the next to step into the arena is none other than the swordsman Tsuji Okita. This kid has been dying to fight since the start of all this. On the list, we still have some heavy names like Rasputin and one of history's greatest snipers, a man called Simo Haiha. But Brunhild trusts that Okita is the best swordsman for this mission. He enters motivated to tie this fight against the gods once again. Meanwhile, Buddha keeps investigating Brunhilde's dirty secret. He discovered that all of this has to do with Siegfried, the dragon slayer. The guy is a demigod, and is locked in Tartarus by order of Odin himself. Apparently, he stole a sword from Odin and killed one of his prized dragons. Buddha went to confront Odin, and Beelzebub also showed up to snoop around. The vibe among the gods is more fractured than we imagined. But while Buddha was talking to Odin, something was wrong and tension began to rise. Apparently, something is really going down, and we see it in the sinister smile Odin lets out at the end of the conversation. Moving back to the combat site, we see that the arena has been completely changed to look like Kyoto for the next fight of the tournament. Okita will face the god Susanoo no Mikoto, the strongest god slayer. But unfortunately, the season ends right on that insane cliffhanger, leaving everyone curious. We don't know when the next season will be out, but the hype is through the roof. And if you can't wait, you can jump straight to chapter 84 of the manga and keep up by reading. Got it? The war for humanity's survival is far from having a final winner, and this move showed that our spirit never bends in the face of the impossible. From Tesla's sacrifice to Leonidas' final respect, this season we proved that humanity is massive. And if you don't want Beelzebub to cause a chaos explosion straight in your browser history, my friend, subscribe and leave a like now, alright? And as you already know, I'm heading out. I'll see you in the next anime. Peace out.